today's episode is about our past life experiences that have led us to our current experience. I am going to go over my experiences thus far with my past life encounters, with my karmic resolutions, and where my understanding rests now. And as I gain more experience, more knowledge, I will continue to talk about my journey into the unknown, finding out and learning the secret knowledge of my subconscious, understanding more of the unknown for myself in my life and how that manifests with clients, how that manifests with family members, and what I see happen. So to give you a background of who I am, my name is Simone Michelle. I am a holistic practitioner, and I've been practicing with clients for the past 2 years. I would consider myself to be a baby in all of this. Although I have been in the spiritual realm my entire life. I started off as a child with a deep desire to know more about God, which led me into youth ministry, pastoring positions, dance ministry positions, and just a leadership mentality that I took with me throughout the jobs that I worked, throughout everything that I did in this lifetime. I've worked as a personal trainer, I've worked as a manager, I've worked as a designer. I've lived a lot of lives within this life with the knowledge that I did not know was an accumulation of everything I had known before. So in this present life, I am living my life as a healer. I own a business called Supranova Body, and I focus on healing the whole being. So not just the mental or the physical, but the entire being. So that includes the soul. It includes situations that we may not understand, or situations that we don't understand the severity of their impact on our mental, physical, and spiritual health. I started my journey into past life regression and understanding my past lives about 5 years ago, after running into someone at my job, someone that believed that they had lived another life in Egypt, and they were completely convinced that they had lived this life and were killed by being bitten by a snake. They had the marks on their body, and they were just completely animated, and I was just convinced that there had to be something there. So I kept that with me, and I really just put it in the back of my mind as something that I just knew of. I would watch videos and things on YouTube here and there that would touch on it, but nothing that went too deep, because at that point in time, I was definitely not ready. I was questioning my relationship with God, my relationship with Christianity, my relationship with Africa, and my current experience being a Black woman here in America. And I was struggling deeply with anger and frustration and confusion as to why all of these things were happening, and I was not ready to accept anything other than my current reality. So fast forward to last year, I begin to really open up to all the modalities that I begin to use on not just myself but my family. So the first session I did that involved regression was with my mother, and I had just purchased a Tibetan singing bowl that was for the ancient self. And I was like, yes, this will be great for her. She's on this journey of understanding more about herself, and I think this would be great for her. At that time, I was not in any way, shape, or form open to anything about myself. So we sat down and we began. I had no idea how it works. I had no idea what happens. I had no idea anything. I was just like, I just got this bowl. Let's just try it out and see what happens. So we did. And then almost 30 seconds to a minute in, she began to recall her past experiences and her past life and incidents and things, and she began to understand why she is the way that she is in her current waking life. She began to recognize me in her past life and the roles that I had played in a few of our lives together. And that changed our relationship. It changed our aspect of one another, and it opened my mind at that time to the reality that there may be more than our current experience and our current choices and decisions. There may be other things at play when we meet people and we feel like, wow, I've known you for a long time, but I'm just meeting you, but something about you, it's weird. And then something karmic happens and the relationship blows up, or that person stays in your life forever. There are so many different things that tie into our past life, the current lives that we're living now. So at that time, I was unwilling to process or deal with anything that she was telling me. I was just like, I'll help you, put a face to who you're talking about, and I'll help you understand this for yourself. But I was like, yeah, no, I can't. I just want to focus on healing. I just want to focus on my job, my career, my spa, and my holistic practice. That's it. That's all. I don't want to really go into this. This is too much for me. So I began to practice outside of my home. Before that, I had been servicing people in my home at the time, and I opened up a spa in Temecula, California. So I began to encounter so many different people with so many different experiences and different levels of understanding of the unknown and the understanding of their subconscious. So as I begin to delve into that more, I began to open to the possibility that I needed to know more about myself. So I started to research. I started to read a lot about my DNA that I understood, about the aspects of my ancestors that I could trace, that I could put a face and name to. I began first in Africa because that's the most knowledge that I had from previous studies. So I began to kind of connect the dots and understand what life was like and understand more about how things were done and the customs and the way of the African continent as a whole. Not a specific country, but Africa as a whole. And then I started to understand more about Scandinavia and the aspects of the Vikings and different aspects of that as it related to holistic practices. Then I started to go into the Aboriginal, Native American, Aboriginal African side of that and really understand the things that began to happen between the Scandinavians or Vikings, the Africans, as well as the Americans that were here in the Americas. And that didn't help. I just got angry. I was full of anger and confusion because I could not understand for the life of me why there was a repeated cycle of slavery and a repeated cycle of betrayal and a repeated cycle of, in every single part of me, we had slaves and the Vikings, and we sold our brothers and our sisters, and we sold our neighboring tribes, and we sold everybody, we sold people out. So I was just like, this is a lot, and I am so frustrated about understanding this. And I, at that point, was like, you know what, I don't know if I could handle going back and understanding these things. But then at that time, I began to have visions. I began to have encounters where Spirit would just tell me to drive, and I would drive, and I would end up back in all these different reservations, and I would just wonder what the heck I was doing there. But I would feel this overwhelming sense of grief and this overwhelming sense of pain, and then I began to understand what was happening in a past life there to me and my experience. And it was overwhelming. The emotions were intense, and I didn't understand much about regression at that time, so I just decided, I guess I could try to find out more about this and understand more about this. And then as I understood more about the experience that I was having, I understood more about the choices that I was making in my current life. I had purchased a parcel of land in 29 Palms, California, which is very sacred to me. I didn't understand at the time why I chose this location. It's in the middle of the desert. It doesn't seem very ideal, but I had purchased it a couple years back, and I really wanted to make something out of it. When I purchased that land, Spirit told me I had to ask to be there, and I was just so thrown off. Like, why do I have to ask to be here? It's my land. But what it is that you can't necessarily own things. You can be given them for a time, but they're not yours, essentially. And there are powers that you cannot see that have to trust your intention with that area so that you don't desecrate it or you don't do things that are not in tune with the purpose. So, fast forward back to the experience I had near a cluster of reservations in San Diego County. I understood the proximity of 29 Palms to San Diego County, the area that I was in, and understood that the vision that I was having of riding a horse away from that area where trauma had occurred for me. I understood that I went away to 29 Palms in a past life. So having that understanding of the proximity of where this location was, where I had purchased land years before, and where I had to ask again in this lifetime to have the blessing of being there, it began to make sense. So that kind of pushed me into the direction of, okay, past life regression, understanding my past lives. I need to do this. I really need to understand more about what I'm going through right now. At the time, I was looking to expand my spa because it was growing really quick. It was growing really fast, and I needed more space. There was a larger space that came available, and it was just like I was blocked left and right from getting that space, and it just, nothing was making sense. And then I got the word to close and just go out on faith and trust that I would be in my next location. So I was like, okay, this doesn't make sense. I argued with everybody, God, Jesus, Spirit, everyone, because it just didn't make any sense to me. And I ended up finding a really good location that had all of the space that I needed. I had a co-signer, and I was ready to go. All of the financials, everything was ready. However, it just didn't work out. And I ended up going back to Fresno. Fresno is a land that my grandparents chose, and it is a land that means so much to my family that I kind of ran away from in the midst of my divorce. So I ended up coming back to Fresno, and I was like, the only way I will be here is if A, B, and C is done, and this is tested, and this is corrected, and this is fixed, and you allow me to, work from this home. So I came back, and a crazy amount of money just started coming in, and I was able to fix and repair and restore a lot of the home with the help of my family, with the help of random blessings, with just the help of the universe. I got it to a place where I felt like, okay, cool. Now the house aspect is, getting in order. Now I need to focus on myself. Rewind. There was an event that I did with a group of women, and it was for a vision that one of my friends had, and she wanted to bring it to fruition, and I was like, okay. And in the midst of that, so many things had happened. I tried to back out. I didn't want to do it. I was just like, oh, this is not, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I did it. In that event, I did a sound healing ceremony, and it was amazing. The experience was amazing, and I truly enjoyed every aspect of it. I was over a circle. There were about 5 circles where each group rotated to and through, and mine was self-healing, where we utilized massage techniques to check in with our body and begin to heal what our body is telling us. So in our circles, I learned so much from the women that were there who were also healers, or they were just connected to spirit, or other practitioners, women that just wanted to connect with their divine self. So it was great. It was a great experience. And on my last group, there was a lady who had explained and expressed her reluctance to being in groups with people because she always felt so different, because her gifts of seeing the future and seeing the dead and understanding and seeing things that others didn't had basically sullied her experience with other women and people in general. But I was so intrigued by her, and I really liked, the vibe I got from her. So she was speaking to us about a deck that she created, a deck, basically a deck of cards that we use to connect with spirit. And hers was messages from our loved ones gone on. So I was like, oh my gosh, I've kind of been struggling with embracing this. So let me go ahead, So I pulled some cards, and I knew who was talking to me, and I was like, okay, this is crazy. And then afterwards, I just asked her, I'm kind of struggling with the decision. It was to move back to Fresno, and I'm not sure what I should do, and all of these different things. And she began to tell me about healing my ancestors through drumming. And it was weird because at the time I was really into African drumming, and I had been listening to drumming and connecting with the spirit through drumming, and I was opening to the idea of my past lives and needing to understand more for my current life and what cycles I was repeating. So she told me about a special person that was with me at all times that had passed, and his presence was there at the event, and he was protecting me. So I received that. I knew from that point forward that Fresno was the reason that I was heading in the direction that I was heading in, and why things were blocked. And coming back to Fresno was going to be a major enhancement to my spiritual journey. And so the first day that I got here, I got a lot of messages from my family members that had passed, and I wasn't afraid, but I was just overwhelmed because it was so much. It was like turning the radio to the right frequency finally after having so much static. Everything was clear. I understood the purpose. I understood that it wasn't a setback, even though my practice was, at the time, it was beginning to thrive, and I was really excited. It was not going to be a step back, but it was painful. I won't say that I entered it with joy, with happiness. I definitely cried a lot. And the experience coming here was very transformative. At that time, I was going through a lot of changes, finalizing my divorce, ending a relationship that I was in. My father passed away, and then my grandmother passed away a month later. So I was going through, and still am, going through the humanistic side of grief, going through the acceptance of change and evolution, and I had to understand more about myself and what was happening, because nothing was making sense to me. So I began to really search. So I came across a book on ancestral healing, and I began to read that. I began to look more into connecting with past lives, and I came across a show on Netflix. So it was the Andy Warhol show, in which he talked about his relationship with Basquiat. And Basquiat is someone that I have had an affinity with once I found out who he was. So I mentioned that I was a designer, and I used to hand paint shirts. And the shirts that I used, I would draw crowns on the faces that I would make. And then I looked at Basquiat's art, and I looked at the crown that he used, and I looked at the different lines and the way that he drew, and it was kind of crude like my drawings. So I was like, oh man, I had to have been Basquiat, because he died in 88. He died in August. I was born in October. I just know for a fact that I was him. And so that just mesmerized me. I just needed to know. I needed to know. So the goal of me really getting into past life experiences was really to find out if I was Basquiat. That's what was the catalyst for me to really start listening to spirit and listening to my guides that had been urging me to know. So I found out that me and Basquiat are simpatico. I am in fact did not live his past life. I just understand and am connected through, our tree, our lineage, so to say. So we're connected, and I can rely and call on different people that are a part of my tree. So understanding that really helped me to put to rest that feeling and affinity and obsession, because I was obsessed. I just had to know with that, and really focus on myself and my past lives and how that's manifesting in myself and my children, in our lineage, in our line. And as I understood that by healing not just my past life, but correcting the issues within my lineage and my ancestors, that I could affect and heal more people than I necessarily anticipated, simply by being a hands-on healer or hands-off healer, depending on the technique. So I learned that everything was coming full circle, that my experiences and my confusion with who I am and the different parts of my lineage is all just a relative cycle and process, and understanding that we're all interconnected, and that our lives connect far beyond what we believe or think. And a lot of situations repeat until we correct the karmic nature of them, or until we heal what was meant to be healed. So I noticed that when I spoke about my mother's past life regression, that there were aspects of it that I just could not accept, and I did not want to accept or even go there, because it would require me to have to heal things from my past. And it seems sometimes that if you're already healing things in your present life, the idea of going back and taking on something else is overwhelming, and the idea of doing that is just too grand. However, I needed it. I was at a place where I had just lost my father, I had lost my grandmother, I had lost my relationships, I had finalized a divorce. It was final, it was done, it was finished. And I just couldn't fathom, having to continue to go through this pain, and I needed to know. I needed it. Life had created a perfect recipe for me accepting fully what I needed to do and what I needed to know. Not to say that in my regression sessions with myself that I'm always accepting of the information I'm given, but the desire to go back and face it and correct it and fix it is much stronger than my desire to hide or run from the unknown. I say all that to say, I would never recommend that someone do it or go on this journey just because it sounds cool, but because they're mentally, spiritually, and physically ready to go there and really experience what life has for them and what messages can be given through the experience. So there was a situation in my mother's past life regression where she explained that I was her medic, basically. I was her holistic guide, magician, whatever you want to call it in those times. That's what I was. And I didn't want to accept that because of what came with it and my responsibility to her passing at that time, and I just could not accept that. And it took me about a year to fully accept what that was, what that is, what that looked like, and how I can heal that and no longer bring that baggage with me in the future. So I said all that to say it's a journey, and it's never one that should be taken lightly or ignored or sped up or diminished or anything. It's one that's unique to each person, just as grief is and love is. It's all unique to your experience in that time with that person, depending on the settings, the circumstances. Yes. So here we are. I have completed my past life regression into one of my past life regressions into my ancient self, and I've connected the dots with my mind. So I knew that I was this figure, and I couldn't understand for the life of me how it all connected, because I just couldn't understand how so many people could have these memories and ideas of being the same person. And then I understood that we are essentially of the same tree. So we fragment into different parts, and the main souls that we come from, we fragment into until we can develop our own tree within our own selves. So the concept is basically, when you look at a pecan tree, and I have a massive one in my backyard, and it drops pecans that turn into trees all the time. Some don't, some do, but it takes time for that pecan to develop and mature and grow. And then when it does drop and it becomes its own tree, then it has the ability to create its own tree, own leaves, own limbs, and own pecans in a sense. And that is my understanding as of now of the life cycle, which is why we can have so many people say that they're the same person, or they have these memories or dreams or whatever. Ultimately, we're all from the same line. So a lot of us may have different experiences. A lot of us may not come from the same tree. A lot of us may come from one part here, one part there. Our experiences are different. The times we choose to reincarnate, our purposes are different. But it's all relative. That's what I'm learning, is that we're all matter, we're energy, and we're all relative to our experience. So back to my present day regression. So I connected with my past self, and I owned up to my choices and decisions that I had made back then. And that was difficult for me, because it meant that I had to accept and confront what I did, and then how that manifested in present day. And so in clearing that situation and sending healing, light, and love to it, I had to come to my ancient mother. In that aspect, she was not my mother, she was my employer. And I had to make amends and honor her fears and really hear her in present day. So I had to basically make a commitment to her that I would not do certain things to harm her, and only in, making those agreements did it free that area to be full of light, love, and energy. And then I had to accept that going forward, I could no longer hold on to certain hindrances and things that would prevent me from being my full actual self. So, I accepted my decisions and choices then. I corrected that situation then, so that going forward, that karma would not be replaying in my cycles and my lineage anymore. And it also would correct and heal a present day relationship issue. And then I had another regression with an ancient self that came after that. And that experience was illuminating. It connected me to my reason for my connection with food and the relation to knowledge, and my hunger I was born with a hunger, but it wasn't a hunger for food, it was a hunger for knowledge. And if knowledge was not being readily attained, it would translate to food. So at least I was being nourished. At that time, I had also went through a famine. So the lack of food triggered something in me to basically always have to have either food or knowledge, so that I can continue to learn, continue to strive, and continue to be nourished. So that was a revelation for me that I'm still processing, digesting, and implementing in my current life, so that my relationship with food and my relationship with knowledge are put into proper perspective, so that going forward, it's not an issue. It's not something that my children will have to battle or worry about. It's not a fear that people within my family will have to overcome. So, my understanding of self and my understanding of my ancestors has changed greatly based on regressions that I've done, not just in my past life, but in my ancestral line, to heal trauma that affects us today. As I continue to heal, the next primary focus is relationships. I've started to heal relationships with friends that I did not know we shared a past life together, and dive into that and what that looks like. Really understand my decisions and choices and partners in my current life, and the karmic energy that we are correcting in this life, and where it came from, where it originated. So it's an onward process, and as I continue to have these regressions and I continue to have these experiences, I plan to share that knowledge, because I'm sure there's someone that is either beginning or well into their own regression journey, using it as a therapeutic way to heal. So I look forward to hearing anyone's input, anyone's clarifications or observations, anyone's opinions on what I've stated, what I've explained or shared thus far. I will close this with a blessing or a promise to enjoy the time that we do have here, and I hope that your day is brighter tomorrow than it is today, and I hope that continues to illuminate in your life. Thank you so much for taking time out your day to listen, and I hope that you come back again. On today's episode of Supernova Body Podcast, we are going in depth into past life regression, the different types of regressions, the purpose of doing them, how to facilitate, what are the ways to go past your ego or subconscious, and all of the connected or related terms and terminology. So if you're interested in any of that, I suggest you stay tuned. So we're going to start off with past life regression and what that means to me. And past life regression is the process of accessing data stored in our soul tree to better understand our previous experiences that we have lived on Earth, or even in other galaxies, dimensions, planets, etc. Though the ultimate purpose of a past life regression is to understand certain responses or triggers manifesting in our present day lives. So an example of that would be having a fear of water and never having experienced anything traumatic in regards to water. So the fear of water or the impediment water can have on your life is just like crazy, and you're like, why? What is this? You know, I've never even had a bad experience with water. I know how to swim. I'm pretty comfortable and confident with my ability to be around water. So why am I so afraid every time I get within an inch of it? past life regression would come into play, where you would be able to access a past life you may have lived. And in that past life, you could possibly discover that you drowned, or someone that you love drowned, or you just had a really crazy experience with a flood. Anyway, in your present life, you're not allowing that experience to pass through. You're holding on to it for good reason, either as self-preservation, to protect yourself, or just trying to not repeat, the same cycle again. And that's just a simple kind of example of why past life regression would be relative or useful in current life situations. But there are many different types of regressions that can be done for different therapeutic results. So another one would be current life regression. So let's say you have a memory or something that happened when you were 5, and you somehow have created a block or a wall. Like if you think of spyware on a computer, that's basically what your brain is doing with that memory to protect yourself from going there, accessing it, or even letting it go. So a good reason to use current life regression would be to access where something started. So I'll use a personal example for this one in regards to weight loss and my journey with it and my struggle with it and my lack of understanding of why it was such a big deal for me in this current life that I live. So when I was younger, I had a very strict father, and he would restrict our eating greatly. So I would sneak and eat things and get in trouble, and it created this fear surrounding food, where I felt as if I didn't have enough. I needed to make sure that when I did eat, I ate enough to carry me through to the next phase. And I became like a squirrel, basically storing away food just in case I needed it, but inside my body, and not allowing that to go, just for fear of not having enough nourishment. And that's something that I discovered during a current life regression, where it took me back to when I was a child, so I could understand this is the pinpoint root of your experience in this lifetime. And that helps you address it in relation to our current technology, in relation to ways you may understand better than doing like a past life or ancient self regression to understand it. Let's see. And then there's also past life and ancient self. So I briefly touched on past life. So that could have been the life you lived previous to this. You could have also had none. That's another thing. If you're a new soul and you've had no previous lives, and this is your first experience either as a human or on Earth, then you won't have anything to tap into as far as your relation to your lives on Earth. And there are other lives that have lived 13 lives before, or 45 lives before. Like everyone's experience is different. This could have been someone's second experience, and they're still going through the motions and learning and applying the lessons to their soul tree. Our ancient self or past self. So there's a difference. Our ancient self will be something that is before any of the cataclysmic events that stopped a period. So, for example, if you lived in Mayan temple before all civilization was wiped out, or if you lived in ancient Egypt before everything changed and all civilization was wiped out, those would be your ancient self experiences. Even if you were a Neanderthal, or you were some form of a Homo sapien, and you lived in Atlantis, whatever the case may be, those are the ancient selves that we would connect with and address. And that is an entirely different subject in itself, and I'll go into a lot more depth in another episode specifically on ancient self and our experiences in ancient times. When I refer to past life, I'm referring to anything in the 13, 12, 1400s, 1900s, 1700s, anything within that time period, AD basically. That is where you would tap into your experience in this period of time. And then we have our ancestral regression, and that goes into the lineage of our family, whether it be some people repeat with the same people. They repeat, they come back as a granddaughter, they come back as a grandson, or they come back as a cousin. They keep continuing this cycle of within their tree. So when you do an ancestral regression with the purpose of healing trauma, you go back into where this particular incident created the issue for us. So it's not just about you, it's about anything connected to your lineage. So going back and doing an ancestral regression would be for the purpose of healing some repetitive trauma that you're seeing throughout your family tree, or an event or a situation that is repetitive and it keeps happening to either all the women in your family or all the men in your family, and you're trying to figure out or pinpoint what the heck happened that created this residual effect for all of us. There are many examples of that. You could look at your own family and do all the women have long hair? Do they all have short hair? Do they all suffer from some form of illness or miscarriages? I know that both of my grandmothers had several miscarriages, and some of my aunts had miscarriages, and some couldn't have children at all. So that's something in my family. I myself have experienced miscarriage. So understanding where this happened or why this happened helps you heal or break that generational bond, that generational agreement, that generational pact that keeps us in the present experience that we necessarily don't have to live in, but we choose to unknowingly. A lot of times we make bonds and pacts with people in previous lives to do things or experience things here on earth, and we don't honor them, or they don't honor them, or we decide that that was a stupid decision or choice, and then we create some kind of residual trauma from that experience. An example would be, I'll use a personal example of, I'll use a vague example because then it will make sense later. But using a certain drug, and it's something that you don't necessarily understand why you're doing it or why it's ingrained in you, and then you look in a previous life and you were heavily addicted to heroin, and then in this present life you switch it and you're heavily addicted to whatever the experience or lesson that you're choosing to learn in this lifetime could be attached to an ancestral decision or just an agreement or choice that you made before you manifested here again. So an example of that would be like with the drugs, it could have been something that came from an ancestor where it was a common practice. They were running from something, they didn't want to deal with something, and they perpetuated it going forward. Fast forward, it's something that's a part of you, part of your life. You're dealing with the drug, you're not able to kick the addiction, and it's repetitive through lifetimes. That is something that could either connect to a previous life, it could connect to an ancestral choice or decision, and that is why it would be beneficial to use the ancestral regression as well as the past life regression to fully understand where it started, why it started, and how you can make peace with that and correct it. So just having the knowledge of the reason for the trauma is not enough. You also have to basically do some work to heal that part and then transcend that through to everyone connected to the situation when you're dealing with the ancestral aspect. Another example of that and what that would look like is with the addiction. You find out that it is in fact due to a grandmother that was hurt and did not know how to process the experience and chose to never deal with it. And so that became the practice within your lineage, that everyone figures out their own way to never deal with it. Whether it's through self-medication, whether it's through acting like it never happened, but the situations keep happening to get us to a point where we can process and deal with and acknowledge that these things happen and we have to move forward. So in your past life regression, you would go to that situation, or your ancient self regression. I apologize. Your ancestral regression. You would go to that place with your great grandmother or whoever and heal that with them. And you would take time to send love and light. You would take time to figure out a restoration, to talk it through, to fully understand, to share knowledge, to heal, ask for forgiveness, provide forgiveness, whatever it takes to begin to heal that. And then you send that and send that through all of the people that it has affected within your ancestral line, and it comes to you, and you begin to see the transformation in your present life. So it seems like it's just like, well, this is all imagination. This is nothing. This is pointless. But it is definitely beneficial and definitely helpful to family. Whether they know that you're working on it or not, you'll begin to see the changes. You'll begin to see transformation within your siblings, within your parents, within people that are just connected to you, that you don't even know of. You'll just see the transformation. And that's why that is super important, because it's not just a self thing. It's a us thing. And when we realize that we're all connected, the health of everyone becomes more important. And the healing of everyone becomes the focus and focal point. And then there's also the in-between life regression or accession. So you are focusing on what has happened after you've left Earth and where the soul has gone and what has happened during that time while you're in the ether or you're in the astral realm. Did you go to another dimension? Did you go to another timeline? Did you go to another planet? What happened? Did you remain in the solar system? Did you reincarnate as an animal? What happened? So you learn what the debrief was, what the overall lesson was of the lifetime that you experienced, and how that can, apply going forward. So you can understand, when a lot of people talk about going into the light, if they've had near-death experiences or they did die and then came back, and they speak of going to the light and then understanding and having just this sense of love and peace and joy and just full understanding of their life experience and why everything has happened. A lot of times we forget that we've made contracts with people and they are our soulmates. So soulmates can manifest in many different ways. A person can be our boss. A person can be our parent. A person can be our lover. A person can be the parent to our child. We've made agreements with them prior to coming to Earth for them to play these roles. And sometimes people are obedient and sometimes they're not. However, we choose our experience and what it's going to be like and how beneficial it's going to be for our soul's experience and our soul's understanding and experience going forward. So an example would be I'll use a personal decision or choice that I made. So for my purpose here on earth, in order to heal and in order to correct mistakes that I had made in previous lives, I chose to handle a whole lot of trauma, just a lot. And before I understood my purpose, it was very frustrating, upsetting, and it made me just want to check out. Like, no, I'd just rather not do this because this is too much. Like, what on earth did I do to deserve this? Like, this is a lot. And then when I understood that I, in fact, made this choice and this decision so that I could activate certain gifts through trauma activation, and I'll also explain that in depth, I then had more peace with my decision and my choice, and I understood that it was for the overall objective of getting to where I needed to get. And having the knowledge that I needed and having the empathy and the tools that I needed in order to fulfill my ultimate purpose. So, in understanding that and experiencing that, I was able to utilize all of the information of my previous lives and really put it into play and have peace with it, and understand the ultimate goal, and how I connected with my soul tree and why it was relevant. You also have the ability to tap into all knowledge. So we all have, depending on what religion or belief system, most do speak about a book of life, or a book that records all of your actions and deeds, and that is our Akashic records. And you have the ability to get answers to the present, to manifest for the future, and understand where your choices will take you. It's basically like a predictive novel that you have access to in order to make the best decisions and choices for your highest self and highest experience here in this lifetime. So that focuses on the present, it focuses on the future, it focuses on the best choices for, our highest self. All of these different regression methods are relevant and can be used in a way that can help. However, I will say this. If you do any form of regression before you're ready, it can cause more harm than good. Until you come to a place where you're at peace with understanding the process of life, with understanding how we can reincarnate, who we can reincarnate to, what previous lives you may have had, and encounters you may have had with previous people, it's not a good idea. And I'll say that because it is an extremely emotional journey, one that until you get to a place of full acceptance can be very painful for reasons of, I'll share it like for myself, a soulmate that I had over since my creation. It was a repetitive situation, a karmic cycle that just was not breaking. And the understanding that it wasn't just this lifetime, that it's happened over and over and over, and all of the different experiences, situations, and heartbreaks that have been received was overwhelming. And it made me so mad for a while, because I was just like, dang, like every single lifetime you do the same thing? Like, that is crazy. Every time we experience life together, you do the same thing. And the cycle hadn't been broken. It hadn't been karmically released. It was just perpetuating on and on and on and on and on. And it took me a lot more time to process that than it did any of the other experiences that I had. And it also took me a lot of time to process another soulmate that I had experienced over and over and over because I didn't understand their perspective. And then when I understood their perspective, it changed my perception of them and our experiences that we had before. But it took time. It took time, and it wasn't without emotion. None of this is just going to be like you do it and there's no emotional response or no emotional release or empathetic approach. Like it takes all of you. And so if you're not ready to tap into that or to go there, I wouldn't recommend you do that. And if it's something that you don't feel that you can do alone, I definitely recommend you reach out to an accredited, licensed regression therapist that can walk you through the steps to complete your journey and really, hold your hand and offer you their perspective and understanding of your experience in order to help you create your own, because it's definitely not a situation where anyone can touch it or anyone can offer their interpretation. It's something that is on a soul level that will only be your interpretation and your understanding because it is ultimately your experience. And I mentioned soulmates. A lot of people refer to soulmates as lovers, when in actuality, soulmates are anybody that you've been mated with for a soul purpose. So like I was saying, your boss, that one boss that you just can't stand, it's possible they're a soulmate and they're doing their soul's purpose for your ultimate experience. An enemy, it's not just people who bring us butterflies and make us feel like we're in love. Those partners could be twin flames. They could also be karmic in nature, and I'll definitely touch on that in a later episode. But we choose our people. Some people believe it, some people don't. It really is, take what you believe, what resonates with you, and leave what you don't. For me, in my experience, I've learned that it definitely resonates with the people I have had in my life, have wanted in my life, have brought into my life. And when you meet people and you're just like, dang, man, it feels like I've known you forever. Like, you're my best friend. And they stay your best friend forever. Or people who you meet for a period in time and you guys are super close and then something happens karmically that pulls you apart. Okay, you've got to understand, what the purpose of that is. I say you have to understand because who wants to live in bitterness and trauma forever? Who wants to continue to repeat this every lifetime? So for me in this experience in my life now, I'm healing all of that. I'm correcting all of those karmic relationships, fixing all of those ancient issues, ancient problems, and going forward. I'll give an example of a regression I had in regards to my best friend. And my best friend, when I first started doing regressions, I was just like, I wonder who she was. Like, I wonder if she was my twin or something because we're so close and all of this different stuff. So I was just so excited to kind of know because I was like, yeah, that was the easiest relationship for me to be curious about and be open and accepting. How when I found out the experiences that we had and the karmic nature of them, it was painful. It wasn't fun. It wasn't happy. It wasn't what I thought. And it explained so much of our experience in the beginning of our friendship and the situations that we overcame and the different perspectives that we shared. So that was a lot. But when I really accepted it and I dealt with it and looked at it from an empathetic perspective, I was able to fully repair, for me, our relationship. And it made it easier to move forward. So a lot of times you'll think like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. Like nothing could ever go wrong. I'll never find out anything that will devastate me. And then you do. you find out things that, don't necessarily align with your ideals or experience of the present. I'll give another example. In a past life, I was a medic, and I dealt with herbal medicine. And one of the treatments that I was giving was it was a fad. Like, it was popular and everybody was doing it. And intuitively, I knew that it just didn't make sense and I shouldn't have done it. But it was popular, so it was a way to have wealth. And I chose to follow the fad and administer that. And I was responsible for a lot of people getting sick. So that for me was a major lesson. And it was something that was very hard to accept and process and deal with. And it wasn't what I was expecting. However, it was what I needed to know in order to go forward with my current business and my life and my decisions to listen to intuition versus what may be popular or what may be what people want. Also, then in regards to marijuana, it's not my favorite herb. It's not a herb that I use often. It is extremely popular though. But it is not even in my top 10 of medicinal herbs that are beneficial for the body. And I did a business model originally that was going to incorporate a lot of marijuana products. And I don't even, I don't even use it for myself. I'll use CBD oil very rarely because there are so many other oils and herbs that deal with inflammation and are beneficial as well. So I just, I had to apply it. I had to apply it to life and not do what's a fad or what other people think is really cool, but use dandelions. That's easy to get, People hate them. They'll pay you to take all their dandelions, but use things that are easy to get, and it's not about money. So I had to learn that and apply that to, my life going forward and be okay with what the soulmate connection brings or doesn't bring and move forward, because ultimately the soul will get what it needs and the experience will be beneficial if we allow it. We have to connect with. All right, so there are a few ways that we can access our past life experiences, Akashic records, or in-between life phases. The first way is through hypnosis, which is the willing acceptance of going deeper into the subconscious through the guidance of an outer person, meditation, or voice. The next option is to do meditation, which is taking yourself through a form of hypnosis and going deeper and accessing your subconscious. Another way is to utilize drugs, such as shrooms, marijuana in some cases, certain teas and roots to bypass the ego and go straight to the subconscious, where our brain can begin to communicate to us things that the ego stops. And the other way would be to enter into a mild sleep. The sleep would happen where you would be in the in-between stage. So if you ever had sleep paralysis, it would be the state in which you begin to go to sleep but are not fully asleep. So it's that in-between stage where you feel like you can move your body slightly but not completely.